In 2007, Steve Jobs introduced the world to the future of mobile devices by unveiling the iPhone. Compared to its predecessors and the other phones that were out at the time, its design was more sleek and user-friendly, mostly because they ditched all the buttons and just used one large screen, which allowed for more customization and easy modification. But even with this innovation, the only apps and services you're allowed to use was the ones Apple provided for you. It wouldn't be until 2008 when the App Store was unveiled, which made it a lot easier for developers to market and distribute their apps. And it seemed that everyone and their mother was trying to do so, because on the store's launch day, 500 apps were already up and ready to download. What we're interested in is the games that were released. Most games were simple and easy to understand, which customers loved since casual gaming was ideal for the phone. Then the first of two big years arrived, 2009, which will be the year that Apple introduced in-app purchases. Before this, games will require a one-time purchase of $5 or less, but with microtransactions, developers can make the games free and charge money for in-game currency that can make things easier, speed things up, or increase daily playtime, which would be the birth of freemium games. The second big year was in 2010, with the unveiling of the iPad and the iPhone 4. The iPhone 4 was a powerful phone for the time. It had components that were ideal for running games. And the iPad was an in-between with the third and fourth iPhone when it came to power, but its large screen came in real nice when playing games. So everyone wanted to get their hand in the cookie bag, which included our main culprit of this video, Capcom. But they already had their hand in the bag pretty early on, since they were developing phone games for Japanese phones as early as 2002 and for European phones in 2004. But they wouldn't expand to the American mobile market until 2006, which is when they created Capcom Interactive, a subsidiary that focused on making and selling mobile games to the Western audience. Capcom Mobile was another larger team that was in-house and made games separate from Capcom Interactive. They seem to have focused more on making games with the already existing Capcom IPs. Interestingly, if you haven't noticed, all these teams were made before the first iPhone was even revealed. But once touchscreen phones were released, Capcom really got to work on their mobile games. But most were simply ports or altered versions of games they already made, or they were based off TV shows and movies like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or even their own Resident Evil Degeneration. And just like all the other early phone games, these had a price tag. It wouldn't be until October 2010 when Capcom announced that they will be making three casual freemium games under the Capcom Interactive team. First was Little Pirates, an original IP that was released later that month. This game is something we don't really care about for this video. It's getting participation points. The second game used an already existing children's property and will be released in November of that year. And the third game was a whole new original IP, which was Zombie Cafe, releasing in January of 2011. This is Capcom's forgotten mobile IP. The gameplay was nice and casual. It had you manage a restaurant by using the power of zombies to get some free labor, while also taking down and stealing from other restaurants. You start the game off as a lone chef in a pretty rundown building. Luckily enough for you, a biotech company has supplied you with a compound that lets you turn people into zombies. So obviously you use it on the first person to eat at your restaurant and on the second who even thinks about stepping foot in, which gives you your first two employees. Now you do what any other restaurant would. You send your workers off to raid the establishment on the other side of the road since they're stealing your precious customers, and to shut them down and steal their recipes. And that's pretty much the gameplay loop. Cook food, serve customers, raid restaurants, upgrade your own, and turn people into zombies along the way in hopes of becoming the next big establishment. But this was a freemium game, of course, so actions are going to take some time to complete, whether that's cooking up the next dish or making sure your zombies are well rested so they don't try eating your customers. But other game mechanics do come into play which makes things more exciting, such as the zombie stats, which will affect how useful they'll be during raids and how likely someone is going to leave them a tip. Upgrading and managing your restaurant is the game's natural progression system, since you need to make sure that there is enough seating and food to serve your customers, especially as you gain more stores and more people arrive to dine out. And with the ability to decorate your restaurant however you please with the limitations of making sure there's enough space to move around, it really makes it feel like this is your restaurant, nobody else's. And like most mobile games at the time, linking your Facebook account to the game allowed you to see your friends' restaurants, which made the game feel more alive. My personal memories with the game seems to go back to some of the earlier stuff in 2012, since most of the gameplay I've seen slash using for this video does seem familiar yet different, whether that be because of the new characters' appearances or the new raid mechanics. Or maybe it was because I was a dumb and patient child and never made it far enough to see all of this cool stuff. The game was actually pretty popular when it first came out, and combined with the other freemium game Capcom Interactive released back in November 2010, they both amassed a total of 10 million downloads and 6.5 million monthly active users. Each game had a 4.5-star rating, with both having over 90% of their player base rating 4 stars or above. Of course, with such popularity, some trouble is bound to appear at some point. Just 3 months after release, Zombie Cafe was mentioned in a class action lawsuit against Apple, where parents attempted to get a refund and get Apple to change their policy on in-app purchases. Before the lawsuit, making in-app purchases had you enter a password once, and for 15 minutes, you were free to spend as much money as you pleased without needing to re-enter anything. A father had mentioned how his two daughters had spent $200 between three games, with Zombie Cafe being one of them. The lawsuit seemed to have resulted in a change of policy, where people now had to enter their password for every in-app purchase. It's not very clear whether this was in resolve the lawsuit when the same month, Capcom Interactive was rebranded to Beeline Interactive. Maybe it was so they could distance themselves from the current issue. But even with a rebrand and lawsuit, Capcom's mobile games seem to have thrived and surpassed expectations, and it was all thanks to the Smurfs. Yes, that's right. The second freemium game that uses children's IP was Smurfs Village, and this one game seemed to have overshadowed Zombie Cafe quite a bit. Going back to children spending a lot of their parents' money, the same thing happened to Smurfs Village earlier in February 2011. An 8-year-old spent a total of $1,400 on the Smurfs game alone. And this doesn't seem to be an isolated case either, since other parents had gotten bills for hundreds or even thousands of dollars because of their children spending their money. Luckily, these parents had gotten their refund from Apple. And what did Apple learn from this? They considered changing their 15-minute purchase window to just 5 minutes. They didn't do it, they considered it. These issues with children spending extreme amounts of their parents' money didn't stop Smurfs Village from continuing on their road to success, since the IP's popularity has set them up for victory since the very beginning. At the time of the game's launch, it had become the top grossing app, not game, app, in 55 different countries, which would explain how when you combine it with Zombie Cafe's player count when it launched, they both had a combined total of 10 million downloads. During the end of Capcom's 2010 fiscal year on March 31st, 2011, was a 38.2% increase in Capcom's operating income in their mobile department. When you convert the yen to USD for the time, you'd get an $8 million increase. The department's net sales had also increased by 13.3% as well. These numbers do come from all of Capcom's mobile games, but they do mention how they were surprised and thankful for how well Smurfs Village was performing. They did mention how they were surprised by Zombie Cafe's steady increase in memberships, which means it was doing alright in their eyes, but it was no Smurfs Village. Smurfs Village success was able to bring enough attention to Beeline that Capcom had them report directly to the Japanese headquarters instead of the American ones, presumably to get ideas and have communication be quicker. The app's success also allowed Capcom to get the license to use the Peanuts IP, which they passed off to Beeline to make another casual social freemium game. This caused a mini chain reaction where a game would be a hit success, Capcom would get a new license, and Beeline would make a new game, which allowed them to use IPs in the likes of Shrek and Ghostbusters. Throughout all of this booming success for Beeline and Capcom Mobile, Zombie Cafe was just sort of off to the side and in the shadows of these other apps. The game was just sort of there, steadily growing on its own and getting constant updates and bug fixes throughout its first 3 years. And it even got a collaboration with Mega Man by the end of 2014, but this was a Japanese exclusive. But this period of time between 2013 and 2014 is quite interesting, since the game had mysteriously disappeared from the Google Play Store, which had marked the beginning of the game's disappearance. Up to the end of the 2012 fiscal year, Capcom's mobile department was doing pretty good, with it increasingly generating money as the years had gone by, and Beeline was able to keep afloat by riding off the back of Smurfs Village and some of its other hits, but that seemed to have been all Beeline really had going for them as time passed by. By the end of 2013 fiscal year, Capcom's mobile and PC SKUs were underperforming, the Japanese phone platform SKUs were having more trouble as more people were moving to smartphones, competition was high, and there was a lack of major releases. Beeline did release another Peanuts game, Snoopy's Candy Town, but it seemed to have failed to gain any traction and didn't have the boom of success their previous games had gotten. Capcom even had to merge their mobile game teams in Tokyo and Osaka. By the end of the 2014 fiscal year, their mobile department was doing alright, but changes were being done to their business structure. This was mainly through, quote, reducing the cost of sales and cutting back on selling, general, and administrative expenses, end quote, which could be translated to less money going to their mobile department. Around this time, Beeline was no longer the powerhouse that pump out money in new games and was now relying on their previous hits to stay afloat. They were making 30% of the mobile department's money, which may sound impressive, but early on, it was not only making the majority of the department's income, but was making a portion of the whole company's money. At the beginning of the 2016 fiscal year, on April 1st, 2016, Capcom merged all of their mobile game teams into Capcom Mobile in order to make games that focus on their own original IP, which means Beeline was no longer their own team. Most of what they were working on got their final updates before being abandoned. To tie things back to Zombie Cafe, we can see a correlation between this community timeline and Zombie Cafe slowly dying. From the game's release up to the end of the 2013 fiscal year, we can see that the game got monthly updates and bug fixes, but afterwards, updates and bug fixes just stopped being released. The 2013 fiscal year was the same time in which Capcom's mobile departments had started to underperform and Beeline's newer games stopped getting traction. This was also the same time in which the game was taken off the Google Play Store, which could possibly be to save Beeline some money. That's assuming that the Play Store was charging Beeline to keep the game up and it wasn't making enough to stay up, which leads us to the 2014 fiscal year, which we know came with business changes that caused the mobile department to get less money, which would explain why the game didn't get a single update or bug fix throughout the whole time period. Focus needed to be shifted somewhere else. The only update this game probably got would have been the Japanese version, since as we mentioned, it collaborated with Mega Man that year. It wouldn't be until October 2015 when the game would have started to get monthly updates and bug fixes again, and would continue to get them up until October 2016, but January, March, and April wouldn't receive any updates. These updates in 2016 seem to have been pretty reminiscent of some of their older themed updates, but after the one in October 2016, Zombie Cafe went MIA. But Beeline was still technically around. They just weren't an independent team anymore, and now needed to work with everyone else on their Capcom Mobile, which means their games were available to download off the App Stores they were still on, which includes Zombie Cafe on Apple's App Store. But all good things must come to an end. because sometime between 2022 and 2023, Beeline Interactive was shut down, and they took some of their games to the grave with them by removing them off the App Store, which included Zombie Cafe. But it seems that at some point, some of the games were given off to other studios to continue development since Smurfs Village still seems to be around. Nowadays, if you try looking up anything Zombie Cafe related, you'd find videos of people playing the game with the data in the title or a list of APKs to download the game. This IP in game is so simple yet so brilliant. It was so fun to just sit down and manage your imaginary restaurant. But just like every other company that's been around for a while, it's going to have IPs and games that they simply don't think are worth sinking money into. Especially now with mobile games looking and playing a lot more differently than they did when this one first came out. But it's pretty obvious that the few people who remember Zombie Cafe still want to play the game, but no matter how much they want it to return, there doesn't seem to be any evidence that their zombie game would rise from the grave once more. But all in all, if you liked this video, make sure you like and subscribe for more inconsistent topics and upload dates. And that's about it. Okay, bye now.